So I walked into Toy Story 5 expecting a film about our relationship to screens, right? And when I left, what it actually turned out was more of like a clinical question that I couldn't turn over. Toy Story was released on June 19th, 2026 of this year at the time of this recording, and something stood out to me that was almost too obvious. Bonnie, now 8 years old, receives a tablet named LilyPad, and her toys, led by Jessie the cowgirl, must compete with technology for her attention. And it's the kind of plot that writes its own op-eds. And yet within 20 minutes, I realized the film was not interested in the debate we have all been having about technology versus analog. It was more interested in something specific, something I have seen in my clinical practice and felt in my body, but have rarely seen articulated on a screen. And this is what I want to explore today. I don't want to explore whether screens are good or bad for children. That conversation is frankly exhaustive, and a lot of people are more qualified to talk about it than me. But my question is this: what happens inside a mother's body when she can feel her child detaching from her and she is watching it happen in real time? And what, if anything, can she even do about it? I want to be clear in terms before I proceed. When I use the phrase maternal nervous system, I am not speaking metaphorically. I am referring to the body's autonomic nervous system, the branch of your biology responsible for scanning the environment for threat and safety, largely beneath conscious awareness. The autonomic nervous system does not think, it feels. It is calibrated in ways both ancient and deeply personal to prioritize attachment, and for a mother, the bond with her child is not merely emotional, it is physiological. The nervous system reads it as survival, and what Toy Story 5 captures, and what I want to walk through with clinical precision, is what happens when a bond is threatened, not by an enemy, not by distance, but by something slow and ambient, like a piece of digital stimulation. And what the film ultimately reveals in its final act is the difference between a threat of attachment and a threat to control. Those are not the same thing. Confusing them is where most of the suffering lives in our relationship to digital stimulation and people. And I want to use Toy Story 5 as a case study. So let me walk you through what the film actually depicts, because it's more clinically precise than the Disney marketing suggests. Bonnie, the main character, is 8 years old, painfully shy, struggling to connect with other children in her neighborhood. Her peers have migrated to screens. The LilyPad, they do not play with toys anymore. They don't play in the way Bonnie still plays with toys, imaginatively, messily, and with the whole world built out of plastic and yarn. Bonnie is isolated, and her parents, watching this, make the difficult decision so many parents make. They buy her a device, a frog-shaped tablet named LilyPad, designed to connect her to other children through a social platform called The Pond. What follows is not a morality tale about screens, it's a clinical sequence. Bonnie becomes absorbed, her attention narrows. The toys Jessie, Buzz, and others observe from the floor go untouched, and Jessie, who has been Bonnie's favorite toy since the Toy Story 3, does something the other toys don't. She interprets the shift as a change in Bonnie's behavior. She uses it as a way to predict her worth. A tablet as a way to predict your worth. This is where the clinical reading begins. Jessie doesn't respond to the tablet. She is responding to what the tablet means, that she is being replaced, and that her value is contingent, that the love she received was conditional on being useful, and now something shinier, faster, more capable has arrived. And if you have ever felt yourself tense up when your child reaches for a device instead of you, if you have ever felt a flash of something that felt like jealousy, but registered in your body as dread, you've experienced what Jessie experiences in the opening act, and you have experienced what I want to name anticipatory grief, the emotional and somatic response to a loss that has not fully occurred yet, already feels inevitable. But the film doesn't just stop there. If it's not already clear, the film starts to escalate. And Jessie, in this symbolic clinical interpretation that I'm making, really represents maternal instinct, and Bonnie represents the social growth of a child and the consequent adaptation to technology. So moving on, Bonnie goes to the sleepover, and it's excruciating to watch. And as a therapist watching, it's painful because Bonnie brings a lily pad and secretly Jessie and Bullseye come to their house and the other girls judge her. They're all on their screens. And when they discover Bonnie bought physical toys, they mock her. They call her a baby. They share photos of Jessie in a group chat and bombard Bonnie with crying baby emojis. Bonnie does not naturally outgrow her toys in the scene. She goes to feel shame and consequently abandons them. And then this is the moment where the film really starts to pivot from a story about technology to a story about an attachment rupture. Bonnie is not rejecting Jessie because she prefers LilyPad, the tablet. She's rejecting Jessie because she's 8 years old and desperate to belong, and has learned instantly and maybe even brutally that the thing she loves marks her as being bullied, and the toy becomes evidence of her own social failure, which breaks my heart just watching that as a human. Jessie, however, cannot read the situation that way. She reads it as a confirmation of her deepest fear that she's not enough. I was loved once and I was left, and this is happening again, which is a lot because both of them are simultaneously going through the change. At this point, I need to introduce the clinical framework that makes this film legible as more than entertainment. Attachment theory, as developed by John Bowlby and refined by Mary Ainsworth, proposes that human beings are wired for connection. The infant caregiver bond is not a social luxury, it's biologically necessary. The nervous system of the child co-regulates with the nervous system of its caregiver. This is not metaphorical. You can see it in the body through heart rate variability, cortisol levels, vagal tone, all measurable, all influenced by the presence or absence of a felt sense of connection. What is less frequently discussed is that this system is bidirectional, meaning the caregiver's nervous system is equally calibrated to the child. When the child signals distress, the caregiver's body responds, often before conscious thought. This is why a baby's cry is physiologically impossible to ignore. It is not just that you want to respond, your body compels you to do so, and the sound of a baby crying activates the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, and triggers a cascade of stress hormones designed to mobilize you toward the child. Now, what happens when the signal is not a cry but a withdrawal? When the child does not reach for you, but turns away and toward a screen, towards their peers, toward a world that does not include you in the same way, what happens? The nervous system reads this too, and it reads it as a threat. The same circuitry that fires when a child is in danger, fires when a child is detaching, because evolutionarily speaking, these two things were once the same. Now, I just gave you a very quick scientific summary, but a child who wandered too far from the caregiver is a child in danger, aka the body has not updated logic for the digital age, which can create confusion in our bodies. Watching your child disappear into a device, you are not being irrational, you're not being clingy, and it's not a sense of feeling like you're failing them in the modern enlightened age of parenting. You are experiencing an autonomic response to a rupture of a fundamental bond, and sometimes our nervous system is doing exactly what it is evolved to do. The problem is that the threat it detects, the withdrawal of your child's attention, is not the same as it was designed for, the physical disappearance of your child. So what I mean by that is that our digital age has made us feel withdrawal even when we're next to each other. And this is why I think the story of Jessie's arc is so important in Toy Story 5, because it instructs us. Because Jessie does not experience this autonomic response, she acts on it. She leaves Bonnie's room, she goes searching for a solution to the screen problem, but for evidence about her own worth, and what she finds is not what she expected. And I want to go into a counter argument that some people might disagree with this frame. To frame this phenomenon as solely a problem of attachment is to miss a critical clinical distinction, one the film makes itself, though you have to watch closely to catch it. So let me return to the sleepover scene. Bonnie is mocked. Bonnie is hurt. Bonnie sends Jessie away, and Jessie is in pain and interprets this as a rejection. I am being discarded again. But is that what was actually happening? No, what was actually happening is that Bonnie is performing a survival behavior. She is responding to a social threat, ostracism, by discarding the evidence that marks her as a different person. And this isn't a rejection of Jessie, this is her own self-protection. And the distinction matters a lot, because if you read your child's screen absorption as rejection of you, you will respond from your own attachment wound. And you will feel the grief, the panic, the urge to compete, to control, to pull the child backward toward you. And the child who is not rejecting you, but simply navigating their own development and social pressures, will experience your response as confusing and suffocating at worst. So I want to pause on this because it is the pivot point of the entire argument. The maternal nervous system, under conditions of perceived attachment threat, tends to reach for control. When it feels threatened, if I can just manage the screen time, if I can just be more present, if I can be more interesting than the iPad, these strategies feel like love. They often present as love, but clinically they are often manifestations of our own attachment wounds and anxiety, attempts to regulate our own nervous system as mothers and not the child. So the film externalizes this tension through a brilliantly practical scene with Woody and Buzz in Bonnie's room physically unplugging LilyPad's charger to gain leverage over the device. They tried to overpower it, and it does not work, not in the way that they hoped. LilyPad, like most tablets, is simply doing what it was designed to do, to offer stimulation, offer connection, fill the silence. Fighting the device is not the solution. The solution requires understanding what the device is actually doing to Bonnie and to Jessie. So this brings me to the sequence that is the most important in the entire film. After the sleepover disaster, Jessie leaves. She ends up through a series of events I will not fully recount here, at a farmhouse. The address is 1200 Ranch Road. This is the house where her first child, Emily, Jessie's first owner, the girl whose abandonment traumatized Jessie in Toy Story 2, used to live. Emily does not live there anymore. The house belongs to a new family, and in the yard, a young girl named Blaze starts to play. And Jessie, feeling discarded, finds her way to a large tree with a tire swing, the exact spot where Emily played with her decades ago, and carved into the bank are the words, "Jessie was here." She digs into the dirt beneath the tree and unearths a lunchbox. And I will tell you what is inside, but first I need to tell you why this matters. Jessie's entire psychology across all three films has been organized around one belief, that I was abandoned because I was not enough. The girl who loved me stopped loving me. The girl who played with me threw me in a donation box. And the bond was not real because it did not last, right? And this is not a Toy Story. It is so much bigger than that. It's an organizing belief of so many women who grow up watching their child become independent. And I was not enough on my own, quote unquote, as a mother. I was not enough as a partner. And I'm not enough for my child. These thoughts tend to ring in people's ears, and the evidence in Jessie's life is everywhere, and Jessie has been looking for it her entire existence. But inside of this lunchbox, Jessie finds photographs of Emily, adult Emily, standing next to her own daughter, and Emily named her daughter Jessie. She named her human child after her favorite cowgirl doll. The revelation lands with the force of healing, and this is what it is. Emily did not throw Jessie away and she forgot she existed, she discovers. The toy left a permanent, lifelong psychological imprint on her, and the bond was so real that it changed from growing up to being able to have influence on a person. And I just want to say Jessie's abandonment trauma was real, but the meaning she assigned to it was incomplete. So the end of the story is so beautiful because Emily's lunchbox does not erase the grief of being left, it recontextualizes it. The same event, the end of a particular kind of closeness, can be read as rejection or as an evolution. And if you watched my last episode on my analysis of Christopher Nolan's movie Memento and its connection to our understanding of memory and deep work, what you'll find is that oftentimes we can reinterpret the past through what we continue to experience in the present. The more that you can recontextualize your memory, and the work is learning to hold other forms of perspectives that maybe our perspective in moments of anxiety are not always true. And so ultimately what Toy Story 5 offered me was not a warning about technology. It offered a mirror for the maternal nervous system. And I continue to be fascinated by the maternal nervous system. I'm currently I just finished actually part 1 of a postpartum maternal mental health training, and I'm on my way to take an advanced one. And hopefully I can be certified in postpartum mental health by the end of this year. That's the goal, at least. But I was surprised at how much I learned just watching Jessie and Bonnie's relationship, and just like the growing up that happens for both of them. And it's a difficult journey to navigate. And so let me make this practical, because I'm a therapist and I believe insight without application is incomplete. So what do I do? The first step, if you're experiencing something like this, is not to remove the device. The first step is naming what your body is actually responding to. The enemy is not outside of us. It's actually trying to analyze what's inside of us. And when you feel that tightness, that flash of dread or irritability when your child reaches for a screen, just pause before you act and ask yourself, am I responding to a threat to my child's well-being or to a threat to my felt sense of connection? And those are different things. They require different responses. The second step is separating the physiological from the narrative in your mind. And your nervous system produces the sensation, a tight chest, vigilance, urge to intervene. Your cognition then produces a story. They don't need me anymore. I am losing them. I am not enough. This sensation is real. The story may not be always real. And so learning to feel the one without believing the other is a skill. It's rehearsable. It's important to listen to your body, but not to believe every story that goes through your mind. And it's what regulation looks like in practice. And the third step is one from the film, and it's the final act, is to let the bond change form without interpreting the change as rupture or abandonment. Bonnie doesn't abandon her toys at the end of Toy Story 5. She integrates them with her new friend Blaze. They play together with toys, with imagination, with the very pull string phrases that once belonged to Jessie alone. The toys aren't discarded, they're shared, and a new bond is formed. It's expanding rather than breaking. And this is possible for you too. It requires tolerating the discomfort of watching a child move toward things that might not be you through peers, interests, devices, a world that's not curated, without collapsing in the movement of rejection. And finally, to conclude, thank you for listening to this video. I began this exploration with a question: what happens inside a mother's body when she can feel her child detaching from her, and what can she do about it? What I found through the surprising vehicle of an animated film about plastic toys is that the body's response is lifelong and ancient. It's always been there, and it's not an evidence of failure. The threat is real, the bond is changing, but the meaning of the change is not fixed. It can be reframed, it can be re-regulated, it can be survived. And I loved how the film really integrates the toys as growing characters and people that can coexist in the service of a child. And Jessie understanding her value in a new way without feeling like Bonnie should never grow up in order to earn her worth was really beautiful. And the final image I want you to leave you with is not from the film, it's from your own nervous system right now as you're watching this. And maybe you're carrying a quiet vigilance, the one that scans for signs of distance, bracing for loss. That is your body saying that you're wired for love, and it's wired in your body. The question is not how to turn it off. The question is how to hold it without letting it run the show. And the first act of regulation is not removing anything, but being able to have enough of a relationship with your body to know that it cares about you, to notice any form of threat. And so thank you for watching this, and hope to see you next time.